Okay, council members and president, we are live.
Thank you very much. And thank you and good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We will start our process. Sorry to be a little late, but there's a lot of different iterations and changes and discussions. We're dealing with your money, so we want to make sure that we make the appropriate and the best and most efficient and effective decisions with your money. But before we begin the public hearing, I'd like to make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to the public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We're using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings on council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, the Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearing, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I'll now note that the hour has come. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll to take attendance, and members that are in attendance, please indicate so by saying you are present.
Councilmember Bass.
Good evening, Mr. President, colleagues in the city of Philadelphia.
Good evening.
Councilmember Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Dom.
Good evening, Council President, colleagues, present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Good evening, new colleagues. I'm present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Gautier.
Good evening, everyone. Present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good evening, Council President and colleagues. I am present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Green.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, good evening, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Gim.
Good afternoon, Council President. Good afternoon, colleagues. I am present.
Good afternoon. Councilman Green, we're close to morning, so. Good evening.
Councilmember Johnson.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, colleagues.
Councilmember Jones.
Good evening, President Clark, colleagues. I'm present.
Good evening.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Councilmember O.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, colleagues. I'm present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Parker.
Good evening, Mr. President and colleagues present.
Councilmember Quinones Sanchez.
Good evening, Council President and colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Squilla.
Good evening, Council President and colleagues, present.
Good evening.
Councilmember Thomas.
Good evening, Council President. Good evening, colleagues. I'm present.
Good evening.
And Council President Clark.
And good evening to you all. We've established a quorum, so the hearing is now called to order. This is the continued public hearing of the committee of the whole regarding bills number 20012, 210-284, 220-240, 220-286, 220-287, 220-288, 220-410, 220-411, 220-412, 220-413, 220-421, 220-455, 220-485, 220-497, 220-499, and 220-531, and resolution number 220-300. Mr. McDermott, please read the titles of the bill and the resolution.
Bill number 20012, amending section 19-1301 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Homestead Exclusion to increase the amount of the homestead exclusion under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 210284, amending chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220240, an ordinance substantially increasing the budget and number of areas and neighborhoods around the city served by the Community Life Improvement Program to improve the health, safety, and cleanliness of every neighborhood and enhance the quality of life for all residents. Bill number 220286, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2023. Bill number 220287, an ordinance amending section 10-1001 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Fees of Commissioners of Records to increase certain fees for the recording of deeds and mortgages and related documents under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220288, an ordinance amending 19-1400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Imposition of Tax by creating a Philadelphia County Demolition Fund to increase and encourage economic development by demolishing blighted properties within the city, imposing a related fee for recorded documents and related items, and making technical changes all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220410, amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Taxes by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220411, amending Section 19-1301 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Homestead Exclusion to increase the amount of the homestead exclusion under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220412, amending Chapter 19-3900 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Tax Exemption for Longtime Owner Occupants of Residential Properties to revise the cap on the total amount of exemptions authorized in the program, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220413, amending Section 19-1303 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Discounts and Additions to Taxes in Additions to Tax by tolling additions, interest, and penalties on real estate tax when the assessed value of property is under appeal and limiting tax payments due based on certain assessments under appeal, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220421, amending Chapter 19-2900 of Title 19 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Senior Citizen Low-Income Special Tax Provisions by extending the deadline for low-income seniors to apply for a refund or forgiveness of real estate taxes under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220455, amending Section 19-1301 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Homestead Exclusion to increase the amount of the homestead exclusion under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220485, amending Section 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes with respects to the allocation and apportionment of income and receipts inside and outside of the city, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220497, amending Chapter 19-3900 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Tax Exemptions for Longtime Owner Occupants of Residential Properties to modify parameters of tax exemptions for longtime residential owner occupants under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220499, amending Chapter 19-2900 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Senior Citizen Low-Income Special Tax Provisions to modify parameters of special tax provisions for low-income seniors, including the deadline for filing an application under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 220531, amending Chapter 19-300 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Real Estate Taxes to establish rebates for early payment of real estate taxes under certain terms and conditions. And resolution number 220300, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2023 through 2027 and incorporating revised changes with respects to fiscal year 2022, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this council, approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992, by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. We will briefly resume the public hearing and announce that there are no departments being called back and no further testimony from the public. With that said, are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? There being none, no further questions from members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify, this concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into our public meeting to consider the action to be taken by the operating budget, associated spending measures, and amendments thereto. Thereof. We will now convene the public meeting. Mr. McDermott, will you please call the roll again? To take attendance, members are in attendance. Please indicate that you are present. Mr. McDermott?
Councilmember Bass?
Good evening. I'm still present. Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yeah.
Councilmember Dom?
Present. Thank you.
Councilmember Driscoll?
Present.
Councilmember Gautier?
Present.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Present.
Councilmember Green?
Present.
Councilmember Gim?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Jones?
Present.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Present.
Councilmember O?
Present.
Councilmember Parker?
Present.
Councilmember Quinones Sanchez?
Present.
Councilmember Squilla?
Present.
Councilmember Thomas?
Present.
And Council President Clark.
Present. Thank you. We will now go into our public meeting. The chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for a motion on the amendment to bill number 200012.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer the new amendment to bill number 200012, which would supersede the amendment offered at yesterday's meeting of this committee. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 200012 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 200012 be approved. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. The motion carries and the amendment to bill number 200012 has been approved. Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for a motion on bill number 200012 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 200012 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that bill number 200012 as amended be reported from the committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilmember Thomas for a motion on the amendment to bill number 210284.
Thank you, Council President. I offer an amendment to the bill number 210284. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 210284 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. Chair notes to the record, Councilmember Parker seconded the motion. Has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 210284 be approved. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, ayes have it, motion carries. Chair again recognizes Councilmember Thomas for a motion on bill number 210284 as amended.
Thank you, Council President. I move that the bill number 210284 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Bill number 210284 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Nay.
Nay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let the record reflect. That there were two, I'm sorry. Well, bill passes, majority of members pass. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Would those members like to be recognized as voting nay on the record?
Councilmember Gim.
Councilwoman Gim, Councilmember
Councilmember Gaudier.
Pierre. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Brooks.
Councilwoman Brooks. Let the record reflect that those council members voted nay. Chair recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on the amendment to bill number 22026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to bill number 220286. Copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 220286 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved in second that the amendment to bill 220286 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify aye.
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 Ayes have it. Motion carries. Chair again recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on bill number 220286 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220286 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved in second that the bill number 220286 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on bill 220287.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220287 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. Somebody, maybe that's just my echo. Okay. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 220287 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Chair again recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on bill number 220288.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220288 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and probably seconded that bill number 220288 be reported from the committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And the chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220410.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to Bill number 220410. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 220410 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and probably second that the amendment to bill number 220410 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries, and the amendment to bill number 220410 has been approved. Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson for a motion on bill number 220410 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Bill number 220410, as amended, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and probably second that bill number 220410 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
And record shall reflect that Councilwoman Gauthier, Councilwoman, is it Kim?
Yes.
And Councilwoman Brooks?
Yes.
All right, voted nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220412.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to bill number 220412. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 220412 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that the amendment to bill number 220412 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. The amendment to bill number 220412 has been approved. Chair again recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on the bill number 220412 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220412 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that bill number 220412 as amended be reported from this committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. The motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on bill number 220413.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220413 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that the bill number 220413 be reported from the committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember Parker for a motion on bill number 22045.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220485 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that bill number 22045 be reported from this committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading this day of the bill at the next session of council. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes
Nay.
have it.
Nay.
Nay.
and let the resolution carry. Councilwoman Kim, Councilwoman Brooks voted nay. Chair again.
Councilwoman Gaudier as well.
I'm sorry. Councilwoman Gaudier? Yes, voted no. Correct. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220-497.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer a new amendment to bill number 220-497, which would supersede the amendment offered at yesterday's meeting of this committee. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 220-497 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second that the amendment to bill number 220-497 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The chair again recognizes Councilman Johnson for motion on bill 220-497 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that bill number 220-497 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that bill number 220-497 as amended be reported from this committee with favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220-499.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An amendment to bill number 220-499 has been previously offered into the record. I move that the amendment to bill number 220-499 be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly second that the amendment to bill number 220-499. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. An amendment to bill number 220-499. Chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson for a motion on bill number 220-499 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, I move that bill number 220-499 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly second. Bill number 220-499 as amended be reported from the favorable recommendation, and further move that the council be suspended to permit the first session of council. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Chair recognizes Councilmember O for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220-531.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to bill number 220-531, superseding the amendment that I offered yesterday. Based on a request from the School District of Philadelphia, I have reduced from 5% to 2% the early discount and moved the date forward. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 220531 be approved.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and probably second that the amendment to bill number 220-531 be approved. All in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
All right, we got to do better. All right, we got a lot of background noise. Somebody like really. Let's just do this again. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
Nay.
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 All right, we're gonna have to do a roll call. All right,
Mr. Chair?
Isn't this the amendment? Isn't this the
Yes.
amendment to reduce it?
I'm sorry, Councilman Swiller.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Point of information. Isn't this for the amendment to reduce it from 5 to 2? I'm not sure.
Yes, correct.
All right, it's not to pass the bill, right? Okay.
Yes, amendment to reduce it from 5 to 2.
But not extend 5, right? Okay.
5 to 2.
Right.
Councilman Gautier, did you have something? Somebody else.
I just wanted to also clarify, we're voting on the amendment. We're not voting. The motion is about the amendment, not to report it.
Report out of committee, correct. All right, well, I still couldn't get an accurate count, so we'll have to, we want to change, want to do that over again? Or we either do roll call?
Yes.
Councilman O, you want a roll call?
I don't think so. If it's kind of fuzzy hearing, quite frankly.
Yeah, we're having some challenges.
If you want to do a roll call, I'm fine with that.
I just couldn't determine. We had ayes and nays.
Can I get a point of information and you explain this latest amendment?
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke with the school district, Ori Munson, and the conversation I had with him was very reasonable. They asked for a 2%, no greater than 2%, which significantly reduces the amount that they would forego. I, on the other hand, have serious issues with the amount based on the assessments. However, moving the date up to December 31st, a year prior, satisfies a cash flow issue for them. And that's the reason they made the request, and I think it was reasonable, so that's what I did.
And the administration position, if I may ask?
I have not heard from the administration, and the amendment just occurred after the conversation at about 6 o'clock this evening.
Okay.
When do the bills go out? Isn't it right around New Year's?
Yes.
And the new date's the same. It's December 31st. Seems like a problematic.
Yeah, I think it's based on the assessment that they receive, and the fact that they're, for those that are able to pay it, December 31st.
Don't you have to get a bill before you pay it?
Yeah, I mean, that's their request, and
yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure they know how late that bill goes out, or maybe they do know, and then it won't cost them anything.
Yeah,
Just raising it, that's all. I'm not.
No, it's I'm looking for the language of the bill, that the amendment itself. Shall be assessed and payable within 20 days of the date of mailing of the tax bill of 2% shall be allowed. So 20 days of the date of mailing.
Councilmember O, could you clarify that the district told you that they wanted this at 2%?
They did not say they wanted it. They requested they didn't, to be clear, they did not say they favor the early discount. They requested that the early discount in my bill be amended from 5% to no greater than 2%, and to move the time up earlier than a month. And I think the language is 20 days after mailing of the tax bill.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for the councilman?
One other question.
Yes, what is the cost?
Chair
What
recognizes.
is the cost
Hold on.
mechanism to this?
Hold on. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Yeah, point of information, Councilmember O, what is the impact of this amendment to 2% on the 5-year plan and the bills that have already been passed?
So the 5-year plan, I would have to guess, what it does is 5% is roughly 39.2 million in total. 2% is 15.66 million in total. 7.04 million on the city, 8.56 million on the school. The earlier payment of the taxes to obtain the discount provides the school district with cash flow that they say will contribute to offsetting this and provide needed cash flow. That's the statements of Ori Munson. And based on that conversation, I've amended the bill in that fashion.
And one last follow-up, Council President, and were any of those numbers verified by the administration? In
No.
reference to impact on the 5-year plan? I'm sorry?
No. Those numbers, are the numbers that were calculated by my staff, and I'm not sure if they received feedback from the administration. And I apologize, but we did that at their request after 6 o'clock. So my staff was in City Hall, but we all left to be virtual here.
Thank you. Councilwoman Winona Sanchez, you had a question?
I wanted an impact statement. You know, I think early payments has been something that has been extremely popular. I know that we've made financial decisions about eliminating them. If I knew what the impact was, I'm in a better position to say we should do it. I'm trying to support my colleague here, but without an impact analysis, it's hard. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, we're going to try this one more time. The vote on the amendment, the sponsor call for a motion on the amendment to bill number 220-531. It was seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Hey.
That's one more.
No.
One in.
There's 2-1. Come on, guys. I'm easy.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't realize this would be this tough. I should have done a roll call. All right.
Well, I'll request a roll call just to get through this.
All right, there you go. Thank you, sir.
All right.
I just want the sponsor to request a roll call.
Yes, thank you.
McDermott, call a roll.
Councilmember Bass,
No.
Councilmember Brooks,
No.
Councilmember Dom,
Aye.
Councilmember Driscoll,
Aye.
Councilmember Gautier,
Nay.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson,
Nay.
Councilmember Green,
Nay.
Councilmember Gim,
No.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jones,
No.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Aye.
Somebody really has like some serious noise going on in the background. We figure that out. Almost sounds like a racetrack.
North Philly came out.
I'm sorry, it's this late, you know. I'm hungry, it's late, you know. All right.
I called Councilman Jones, who said nay, and then Councilmember O'Neill, I believe, said aye.
Okay.
Correct.
Councilman O,
Aye.
Councilmember Parker,
No.
Councilmember Quinones Sanchez,
Aye.
Councilmember Squilla,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
I just want to note for the record before I take my vote that this is something that we feel like can be somewhat beneficial to incentivize people to pay their taxes a little early. So I'm going to go ahead and vote aye.
Okay, and Council President Clark.
Nay. These are 7, 8, 9. Nays are 9. The amendment fails. All right, so no need in pulling up.
Point of information, Council President.
Chair recognizes Councilman Spluff.
All right, that did fail. So we have to vote again on this at 5% next time because the amendment was to reduce it to 2%. So next time we have to vote on it, it stays at 5%. Just point of
It's
information.
up to the sponsor. Councilman, do you wish to have a vote on 5% since the amendment failed?
No, I think there'd be no point in that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Squilla. Thank you, Councilman. Okay. With that vote, that concludes our meeting. I'll note for the record that the bill number 220-240, 220-411, 220-421, 220-455, and resolution number 220-300 are being held. This concludes the business before the committee.
Council President,
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gim.
thank you very much. Thank you. I just wanted to, before we concluded, just to make a very brief set of remarks because it's very late. And I don't want to hold folks. There's much in these amendments that are to be praised. In particular, looking out for the needs of our longtime residents, making much needed adjustments to LOOP, providing relief for seniors. There's no question that that was an urgent issue for us to do, and I'm glad that we have a council body that dedicated the time to it. I would like to clarify, however, why I'm a no vote on the wage and business tax cuts that were presented before us today. At a time when our schools are in urgent need of staff in new buildings, when gun violence and mental health and trauma are an all-time high, and we have not done enough for housing and homelessness as much as we have tried to do. Quite frankly, I feel that we have spent far too much time catering to powerful interests in the chamber rather than the 100,000 families in the school district of Philadelphia who need us to find solutions, giving some of the changes in the homestead exemption. That should be a priority for us. Last year, when council was faced with a slew of last-minute tax cuts, I had proposed a tax commission that would review our taxes and subsidies and propose meaningful changes that wouldn't repeat the same incremental efforts that aren't moving the needle nearly enough and which would center what we all know to be true, which is that equity and growth are inextricably linked. A vote against these tax cuts has nothing to do with being pro or anti-business. It's asking our body to be serious about revitalizing our city and to make bold and targeted investments. Targeted relief could have been taking that projected $11 million in BERT money annually and establishing a fund within some department for small local businesses and neighborhoods hardest hit by gun violence to draw down from, rather than an across-the-board tax cut that's shared proportionally equal by mom and pop shops as Comcast. It means putting federal relief funding on the streets where it's needed now. And it means recognizing that our schools are essential to the economic health of our city. Targeted relief could have been a millage shift or grant allocation instead of a marginal wage tax cut to actually provide some kind of structural hold harmless for a school district that is projected to lay off hundreds of critical staff members and still faces a structural deficit. There is still a chance to do more, to be targeted, to be creative, and to be the cavalry, just not to repeat the same structures of the past that are simply not meeting the city's needs and not responding in a time of crisis. And that is why I was a no on the wage and BERT tax cuts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I think Councilwoman Fernandez Sanchez, do you wish to make a comment? Is this old?
No, I actually, I'll wait till we get to the council side of this. Thank you.
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones. You're on mute, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise tonight, this late, to say that I appreciate the diversity of this council, not the diversity just of ethnic nature and birth, but also the diversity of thought. And to balance this out, that this body does a great deal for people in need. We constantly, and I remember a specific time when we were voting on the extension to the relief to extend the moratorium for evictions. And I reached over, well, virtually, to my colleague and asked, are we going to be in the future just as passionate for those in business, those people who worked all their lives to make investments to better the lifestyle of their children and to give them a break too? And I remember when I cast that vote, the answer was yes. So I rise tonight to say, I want you to remember that promise, that small businesses, barbershops, beauty salons are important contributors to our city in so many ways, not just by the money they bring in for tax revenues, but by some of the conflicts that they resolve in their shops to our young people on a daily basis. I want to say that during the pandemic, a lot of those small businesses suffered. And if you go down commercial corridors in my end of the world, some of them have yet to recover, 20% vacancies. And every now and then, it's okay to be balanced in our approach as responsible stewards, to be able to give them a leg up too. Because as I go through my neighborhoods, they depend on us, just like people who are their employees, just like people who are their tenants, to do the right thing for them. And I think with this BERT and with the wage tax, we have done it tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Green.
Thank you, Council President. I will be brief. I want to thank all colleagues of council that worked collectively to pass this budget that we just did. It was not easy because we had to deal with property tax assessment increase that came to us from the administration, as well as do some of the things that Councilmember Jones talked about to really help the small businesses in the city of Philadelphia, and also try to provide some resources to our constituents who are dealing with very challenging times. We see inflation rising, we see the cost of goods going up, and try to balance all of these issues, because this ultimately was a compromise of multiple different issues. Some people wanted more cuts here, some people wanted more cuts there, but ultimately this body came together as one to compromise to move this city forward in the effort to promote growth. Ultimately, we know that the biggest issue in our city is public safety. We know we have a significant gun crisis in our city, and I think many people would agree that the probably best antidote to addressing public safety is having a job. And the best creators of jobs are small businesses. I know I've given this statistic, but I'll give it once again. With a city that has a 43% African-American population, 18% Latinx population, the fact that only 6% of the businesses with employees are owned by African-Americans, and only 4% of businesses with employees are owned by our citizens from the Latin diaspora. We need to do something, and it doesn't have to be either or. It actually needs to be both. I think this body came together to recognize that, to move us forward. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I First, want to thank my colleagues. I think this was a very hard budget, given that we're still trying to climb out of a pandemic and given the gun violence crisis. And all of it was complicated by the increase in the property tax assessments. I wanted to also talk about my no vote on the tax cuts. Um, for me, I couldn't in good conscience vote for a set of business tax cuts that were so broad and across the board. The tax cuts were always sort of pitched to us as a set of cuts that were about small businesses and Black and brown businesses. But there was never real acknowledgement that these are cuts that would benefit much larger businesses too. And I think at a time when we're trying to rebound as a city, I wasn't comfortable taking that revenue away from city services and, letting businesses that can afford it off the hook. And, the chamber has engaged us a lot during this budget cycle. From my very first meeting with the chamber, I made it clear that I do support for small businesses. I do support for Black and brown businesses. I don't support a broad across the board tax cut. But the proposal never changed from a broad across the board tax cut. And so for me, that's why it was a no. If we were talking about raising the exemption for small businesses in the BERT tax, if we were talking about something specialized and targeted for Black and brown businesses, it would have been a different story for me. And then as it relates to the wage tax, the cut that we're making cost a lot to the city. It puts a very minuscule amount of revenue or income in our residents' pockets. And so to me, it was an expensive tax to give residents back very little. And so that's why, I did not feel comfortable taking yes votes on those items, particularly during this time. But I thank my colleagues for all of the work that we all did collectively to get to this point, and I feel good about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Thomas.
Thank you, Council President. And of course, similar to what my colleague said, I want to thank everybody for their hard work as it relates to the budget. The negotiation process has been one that's very strenuous, very difficult. And we have all tried our best to put ourselves in a position to move Philadelphia forward in a way that we can compete, right? Like not just with the issues that we're facing as a municipality, but also thinking about our region, thinking about the tri-state area, and thinking about the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So when I think about my vote today, and I think about some of the amendments that were introduced, I think it's imperative that we send a signal that Philadelphia is open for business. When we look at the issues that we're facing in the city of Philadelphia right now, we have huge issues as it relates to poverty. We have huge issues as it relates to gun violence. I sat in a meeting today and had an opportunity to listen to people talk about some of the ills in our municipality. And one of the biggest issues that we're facing is the issue and the idea of how do we put people in a position to provide a quality living for themselves as well as their family. When I think about all the different concerns that we have as it relates to this budget, I think it's important that we recognize that a lot of our businesses, especially our Black and brown businesses, are choosing to relocate out of the city of Philadelphia and go to some of our suburban counterparts and put themselves in a position where they can continue to generate revenue from citizens in the city of Philadelphia and put themselves in a position where they're not paying taxes to the city of Philadelphia. So I think that a big part of the work that we've done today is to send a message that Philadelphia is open for business. When we look at the BERT cut specifically, the cut is 0.21%, which at the end of the day, when we're talking about the total revenue to the budget, especially with the surplus that we're facing, is not going to impact a lot of the services and programs that we care about. But I think when we look at the ramifications and the impact that the decisions that we made today will have on the future of our municipality, it puts us in a position where we can be more competitive with other municipalities, with industries that are choosing to not locate in Philadelphia and try to thrive in the city of Philadelphia. So at the end of the day, we have a lot more work to do as it relates to the future of our city coming out of a pandemic. We have to recognize that we're competing not just with our surrounding regions, but we're competing with people all across the country as people can work remotely and do things in a capacity in a way that we've never seen before. I'll close out by saying I had the opportunity and privilege to speak at a number of different graduation ceremonies this year. And one of the things that I told the parents at the graduation ceremony is that we're no longer in the era in time where we could tell high school students that at 18 it's time for you to move out and get your own. Technology, COVID, and inflation has changed the world forever. And if we're not going to try to adapt with a moving economy and with a changing world, we're going to continue to trend like Detroit and other cities that are not moving into the space and a place where they're doing things in the best interest of all constituents of their municipality, but especially those Black and brown entrepreneurs. Here in the city of Philadelphia, Black and brown populations, Black and brown people are about 40% of the population, but unfortunately, we're less than 5% of the businesses in this municipality. So I take it as a badge of honor to put myself in a position to do everything that we can to grow Black and brown businesses in the city of Philadelphia and allow those businesses and industries to be as competitive here as they are in other cities. Thank you, Council President, and thank you, colleagues. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on a number of different initiatives. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm actually not the presiding officer over the council session, so I can actually talk today. So just want to thank everybody for their hard work. I do want to remind the general public that the budget is not done until we take the final vote on the 23rd, but this is obviously the framework for that particular vote. I want to thank everybody. This is a challenging time, as we said earlier. It was projected to be a 4 to 5% real estate assessment increase, and we ended up with a 32, right? Citywide, which is way beyond anybody's expectation. So that really created a significant challenge for people trying to be in a position to provide enough support measures for individual property owners in particular. The issue with respects to our ability to do other things, i.e. support for schools and support for business and putting money back in the taxpayer's pocket, i.e. wage tax, is always a challenging thing when you have to deal with the many things that we have to deal with from an operational side. So I think we have addressed all those issues, not nearly enough. But at the end of the day, I want to thank you all for your hard work, your continued presence. Had to charge up my phone like 5 times a day based on the phone call, but it's all good. I do want to say this one thing for the record. In the operating budget, there was a measure that was put in because we do know that in spite of whatever homestead that we do ultimately end up with, there will still be some people that will need some assistance in taxes. So based on some conversations with Councilwoman Parker and Bass and Councilman Dom, we decided to work with the administration to create a fund. It hasn't been named yet, but it's essentially a homeowners real estate tax relief fund. So there's a $2 million startup placeholder. During the course of the year, we will look to appropriate a significant amount of money in that. So even after Homestead, even after Loop or any other particular measure that people may choose, there will still be some challenges throughout our city. So we want to make sure that we establish that fund to help people with their real estate taxes. Because one thing that we cannot allow to have happen is a person be in a position where they may lose their home as a result of something that we did based on a record-breaking assessment that was actually bigger than ABI. So I want to thank all of you. Look forward to moving ahead and doing what we have to do, and looking forward to the 23rd when we can conclude this budget process. And then we have to get out on the street based on the money that was put in the budget for council to do the outreach. And we have to do a very aggressive outreach to make sure that everybody applies.
We are the best city to say when it has to go, we have to go to the ground and do all the work. We are the best city.
Yep.
So we're not going to lose that.
Door to door, right?
Yep.
So, guys, thank you. Thank you all so much. And with that, this concludes the business before the committee of the whole today. I'll see you all in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CP.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you,
Good night.
CP.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, Council
President.
President.
Yes,
Thank
everyone.
you, Council President.
Thank you all. Have a great night.